We're just a few miles from my house. I cycle here a lot, but in the Second World War, I'd have been cycling through a very different landscape. The sky would have been filled with enormous American bombers from the 43 air bases around East Anglia. It was the largest air armada in history.
We were very much involved with them. We were actually within the camp. You had to go past the sentry to get home.
In the summer of 1944, this was the scene of a tragic accident which resulted in the loss of a B-17 Flying Fortress with 10 men on board. 8 died, only 2 survived, and 3 of the crew are still missing. That aircraft was 42-30851 Little Boy Blue of the 388th Bomb Group.
Little Boy Blue had engine trouble from the beginning. Having fallen behind, she was overtaken by the next group of bombers. A mid-air collision occurred.
One morning there's an almighty bang and the windows all shook.
The propellers of another plane cut through the fuselage of Little Boy Blue. He said he heard the sound of metal grinding and felt the plywood floor explode into his face.
I'm looking out the bedroom window and I'm seeing, I couldn't believe my eyes, I'm seeing the tail of this aeroplane going like this.
How are they doing?
Now, you know, seeing my mind now.
The chap who lived in the farm there, when the plane landed, actually it cracked the end of his gable roof. I think it took the east window out of the church.
He grabbed the handle of his unattached parachute and found himself tumbling in blue sky all alone.
Over the next 2 weeks, we'll be following Operation Nightingale's team of archaeologists and veterans to see if we can shed any light on what happened on that fateful day. Our investigation brings us to this typical Suffolk field in the village of Thurston, just outside Bury St Edmunds, the site of the plane crash some 80 years ago. It's just a few miles from RAF Nettishall, wartime home of the 388th Bomb Group of the US 8th Air Force. It's from here that Little Boy Blue set off on a mission to bomb Schweinfurt in Germany. This is a formal DPAA recovery mission, led on the ground by Cotswold Archaeology, supported by Operation Nightingale, Cranfield University, local volunteers and the US military. Richard, what's the plan for this fortnight then?
Well, this is quite an unusual piece of work, Helen. We've got an excavation with a really very specific goal, and this is a project that Operation Nightingale is working alongside with Cranfield Forensic Institute and Cotswold Archaeology on behalf of the American government. So it makes it quite a high-level project, and the real goal is to try and recover the remains, potentially, of 3 American servicemen who died in a B-17 bomber crash here in East Anglia in 1944.
So that's what the American government want us to do, to recover the human remains?
The primary goal, and it's way in front of anything else, is to see if we can recover anything that leads to those 3 individuals. And if we can find out about the crash as well, so well and so good. And that's where the archaeology will really come in. That hopefully will give us a bit more information.
Yes, because that's what I'd like. I think that to close the story for the families, you need not just what's left behind, but also the story of how they came to meet their deaths.
I'd agree entirely, and I think that's partly because it's a story of people, isn't it? And it's getting what happened in 1944, but dealing with the living as well in many ways. And there will be surviving relatives that maybe know about this story pretty well from a family perspective, and from our veterans' point of view as well, and the serving American military we have. It's a very powerful thing, and it may seem incongruous taking people who've been traumatised in modern conflicts to a battlefield, but there's something of care and attention and respect that I think you get hopefully on lots of archaeological sites that we'll be able to bring to this as well.
They were in every way the typical crew, 10 young Americans from 10 different states with an average age of 23. 3 of them were too young to drink or vote, but all were deemed old enough to fight and die for their country. Of the 10 men aboard Little Boy Blue that morning, just 2 survived, Hal Haggerty and Jim Bennett. Of the 8 who were killed, 3 are still unaccounted for. Co-pilot Aaron Brinkoter, pilot Walter Malaniak, and radio operator Ronald Gray, all in their mid-20s. It's these 3 men that the mission has set out to repatriate, to help bring closure to their families. And the tale Local landowner Steve Honeywood, whose family have farmed in the area for generations, has generously opened up the field in support of the mission. It's the hottest September in recent memory, but that doesn't stop the team from mucking in and forging new friendships.
Are you in a team? Are you guys in teams yet?
Not yet. No.
I'm going to join your team.
All right.
Just because.
Little Boy Blue had been considered a lucky plane, having already survived an incredible 66 missions, a figure generally unheard of. Her two former crews had each completed their full tours of 25 missions. But on the 19th of July 1944, her luck finally ran out.
For Little Boy Blue, the day was no different than any of the previous 67 missions. She was fueled up, 5 500-pound bombs in the bomb bay, and thousands of rounds of 50 caliber machine gun ammunition were ready for war. Her crew was awoken very early in the morning. She would fly with 1,200 other bombers today, each bomber with a 10-man crew, 12,000 men on their way to Schweinfurt, Germany. One can only imagine the sight.
Little Boy Blue's survival against the odds meant that she was by this point a comparatively old model, a battle-weary F variant, lacking the improvements of the more recent models she flew beside. One known hiccup of this model was an issue with the engines.
Little Boy Blue had engine trouble from the beginning and soon fell behind. The engine problem was rectified, and the bomber was at full power and continued the mission. Having fallen behind, she was overtaken by the next group of bombers. A mid-air collision occurred. The propellers of another plane cut through the fuselage of Little Boy Blue just adjacent to where my father was sitting. He said he heard the sound of metal grinding and felt the plywood floor explode into his face. He grabbed the handle of his unattached parachute and found himself tumbling in blue sky all alone. He was able to attach his parachute and pull the ripcord. The accident was at 15,000 feet. His chute opened at 2,500 feet. Quite a fall. He observed two other parachutes, the other survivor, Jim Bennett, and co-pilot Aaron Brinkater, who landed here in the burning, exploding crash site of Little Boy Blue.
According to contemporary accounts, the impact crater measured 25 feet wide and 15 feet deep, a sizable impression that we'd hope would have left some evidence detectable today. Dane Wright is the lead archaeologist for Cotswold Archaeology, the unit that's coordinating the dig.
So this is the original area, which is the field at the other side, just to our left. Basically, that's where they originally thought that the crash actually happened. There was an initial survey in 2018 where they'd found items such as this on the sides of the field itself, which would match a particular photograph we have.
Some preliminary geophysics has been done, but the team will be returning later in the week to continue with more techniques across the site.
When we've done the geophysics, mostly what we've actually found is the tram lines for the original ploughing, which is this and this, and then a couple of dark patches, which again are anomalies, and they do suggest that there is possibly something there, but it's not necessarily what you'd expect for something of this size. So we will test them. We have to test them as part of the project anyways, because that's where they thought that the original crash actually happened, but we've also moved on to a second area that we kind of think might actually prove a bit more fruitful.
Dane has been comparing photographs taken from the ground shortly after the crash with contemporary and more recent aerial photos.
These were done by the US Air Force, so they sort of photographed the surrounding areas of the airfields. And this is from 1943, and obviously this is a year prior to the crash. And this shows basically the fields themselves as they were then.
But locating the impact crater is easier said than done.
It's quite frustrating. Again, you know, you expect a B17 heavy bomber that's going out. It's full payload. You know, it's got 5,000-pound bombs on it. It's fully laden with fuel. You'd expect a bit more damage, but it doesn't seem like it's there at all.
So I suppose it's the traditional archaeological methods of going out on the ground and seeing what you can find.
This is exactly it. Yeah.
And are these
always
the kinds
go back
of
to
things?
first principles.
Yes. Is this the kind of stuff that we're looking for?
The accounts suggest that all the bombs went off and it exploded. So essentially, what you have is, best way to describe it is like aluminium confetti.
The field was cleared of surface debris soon after the crash. Then, in 1986, an informal dig was carried out to try to recover wreckage from the plane. Artefacts retrieved included an airman's boot and a .5 caliber machine gun.
I've been digging aircraft up in this part of the world since I was 15, and this was one of the first, or the earliest ones, back in the 1980s. We were amateurs, but what we wanted to do was to ensure the parts of the aircraft would honour the airmen, use them as silent tributes in museums, and we wouldn't forget.
We aim to locate any remaining traces that lead us to the missing airmen. Field walking and metal detecting will gradually build up a density map of finds. While ploughing will have spread the debris, higher density areas might help to reveal the current position of the remaining wreckage.
The DPAA is very cautious about giving away too many details of these projects while they're ongoing, and that's largely out of respect of the families of the fallen. We want to make sure that the information that the families receive has been verified by the DPAA's lab before it gets passed on to them. We don't want to get anyone's hopes up that we've found something when we haven't.
So I'm a reservist that's here on orders for a year. So we're not too far from two bases close to here, Lakenheath and Mildenhall. So those are mainly airmen there, Air Force. So
excellent.
Yeah.
And how have you found them? I mean, did they all volunteer? Because normally I've heard with the American Air Force, it's kind of, we're looking for a volunteer, you.
Oh yeah, voluntold. That's a thing. I don't know if you guys use that in the British military, but we do in the American.
Right.
You're voluntold. No, here this was all volunteers. So I actually just reached out to two different commands down in Cambridgeshire, and so I actually had a waiting list of people who wanted to go. The command picked the best and the brightest to send out here.
Best and the brightest.
Yeah. Well, at least the best.
Said second find within the space of a few minutes, so...
We'll stick with you for a bit then, I think.
Good.
Green if it's too deep, yeah?
Yeah, definitely, mate. Well, I've literally just started there. Have you seen this bit? Still got green paint on it.
Oh, yeah.
Taking off.
With the full geophysics results yet to materialise, the team are still debating the location of the crash site, based on interpretations from the historic photos. And to help settle it, Rosanna has put a drone up to try to match up with the 1944 photos.
So the aerial imagery I've taken while we've been here, you can see the direct line of that track, as was, quite clearly, and fairly conclusively goes about underneath where our white cabin is.
Right.
And I suspect that's going to be what proves that it's all there, is that we're going to have to move all of our welfare.
Oh,
and there's nothing else in the whole field.
Luckily, they're all towable wagons.
Yeah.
They're not too concerned. Like that one over there, we do need a crane.
So you're saying we've got a massive field, and the place you decided to put the cabins is possibly where
we originally wanted to put them down the other side.
That's the most evidence we need.
Well, it wouldn't be the first time on Time Team when the area of interest is underneath the tea hut.
So really what we're saying is geophysics is going to prove or disprove.
Hopefully.
Which is what the first week were about. But it just doesn't quite match up.
You're really sure, aren't you? You're really sure now.
I'm willing to eat my heart out if this is wrong, you know. It's not going to be easy, but
Seen you eat worse,
I'm willing to do it, yeah.
Did you get a condiment?
Yeah. Yeah, do I get sauce with it?
Well, let's hope no one has to eat their hat. At this point, the aerial photos seem to be creating more confusion than answers, so we're hoping the geophysics will be more helpful. We'll see tomorrow.
This one was empty. That one had nothing in it at all.
Okay.
So that simply leaves us with the one over here.
What have we got in here?
Have you found something?
We have indeed.
Oh!
So that's the one.
What is it? A bit of aeroplane?
We hope so.
We hope so. We believe so.
Right. Well, that's iron.
It is. I mean, the planes had a lot of iron on them.
Yeah.
And although they're You know, aluminium is the key thing to get them off the ground because it's light, but they did have a lot of iron on. However,
so, but are you sure that this is part of the aeroplane?
No, is the honest answer. It could be. The key thing for me is that this is the one find that's been made all day in this whole grid, and that's not what I expect from a crash site, from that photograph, which has got all the debris everywhere. Even if it's been investigated and cleared, you're still going to get a lot of metal, and this doesn't, to me, shout a lot of metal.
No. So why did we start in this corner? Remind me.
Well, this was because we have a photograph taken the day after the crash, and it shows one of the engines, it shows the remains that are left of the airframe, and just by looking at the field here and landmarks that are left, it's quite a tricky one. That looked the best view from the edge of the road, so it was the best guess, if I'm brutally honest.
I see. So it had to be checked out because it looked like the best
Yes,
guess.
that's right. That was the rationale for it.
Yeah.
And to put these grids in, it's been a useful test.
Yeah.
Because there isn't
Yes.
that information there, so it isn't this location.
Yeah. So negative evidence has shown that it's not here, which
Yeah,
is
absolutely.
that's a step
Yeah, I mean,
forward.
it's good archaeologically.
Yeah,
I mean, tough work, but it's useful to have done. So the next stage is to bring in magnetometry, do some geophysical survey.
That's tomorrow.
That is tomorrow, so we'll then base the next set of sieving results on what we get with the geophysics, because in the edge of the field over there, you can see all those flags, and they all mark bits of airframe. There are lots of bits of aluminium that the metal detectorists have found. They are parts of the B17.
It's the end of a long, hot first day, and the volunteers are taken to visit the Nettishall Memorial, dedicated to the 388th Bomb Group, where the lost crew of Little Boy Blue are honoured.
So that's the pilot, Ron Gray.
Leo Ramos.
Leo Ramos, that's another of the guys that was killed.
The B-17 was developed in response to the US Army Air Corps' request for a robust, long-range heavy bomber that could deliver a sizable payload over enemy targets. When Boeing unveiled its heavily armed, four-engined prototype in July 1935, the Seattle Times marvelled at the incredible flying fortress. Recognising a good PR opportunity, Boeing swiftly trademarked the name, spawning a legend.
The B-17 Flying Fortress was a really quite radical innovation in the 1930s, a four-engine heavy bomber. But I'm going to be really prejudiced about it. Having flown on one myself, had that enormous privilege of doing that, it's an incredibly beautiful aircraft, and when you walk up to it, sitting on it with its front wheels propping up the four huge engines overlooking you, you can see that it's an exciting looking machine, and I think it had quite an effect on the people who flew it at the time. And the great contrast, of course, is with the B-24 Liberator, which was the other American heavy bomber, and the joke at the time back in those days was that the B-24 was the crate that the B-17 had come in, and that's how they felt about it.
Several factors marked out the B-17. It could fly at a high altitude. It was heavily armed with front, mid and rear guns. And it was fitted with the Norden bomb sight, which, or so it was claimed, was so accurate that it could plant a bomb in a pickle barrel. Most of all, the B-17 could take a battering.
The B-17 was able to withstand an enormous amount of damage, and there are some really extraordinarily dramatic photographs of B-17s with the fin, the tail fin wrecked, the stabilisers at the back very badly damaged, and yet they still somehow managed to struggle all the way back across Europe and the North Sea and back to Britain, so long as they were lucky, but they were more likely to be able to do that in the B-17 than any other American bomber of the time.
We visit the Imperial War Museum at Duxford, where the Sally B, one of only a few operational B-17s, has stopped by. Sally B featured in the film Memphis Belle, but today she gives the team a chance to get a feel for the B-17's anatomy.
Definitely worth coming up here.
We're joined by Vicky Warthen, who's visiting from the States to find out more about her own father's escapades as a B-17 pilot. So your dad actually flew one of these?
Yes.
During the war?
He was a B-17 pilot
during World War II, he was based in Deanthorpe, Harry Warthen, second lieutenant, and came in 1945, so it was toward the end of the war. And like every other 22-year-old at the time, he had hoped to be a fighter pilot, because that's where all the glory was. And the U.S. Army Air Force, you know, they assigned you where you were going to go. So he got assigned to be a B-17 pilot and flew several missions over Germany. But he had taken flak over Germany, but never any serious damage, didn't lose any crew members.
So have you been this close to a B-17 before?
No, I haven't, and it's very moving. It's kind of interesting to see how small it is, I mean, compared to the commercial aircraft that I'm used to. And although I don't think he recognized the danger, the idea that they were flying in the middle of war in, you know, thin metal, fabric-skinned, small aircraft is a little unnerving.
Yes, well, I'll have to get you to pop your head in around the other side because you can see the whole of the inside and it feels much smaller from the inside than it does from out here. It's really claustrophobic in there.
Can
I think you can, yeah, I mean, certainly.
Oh, if you don't
go
mind.
as far as, that's a hinged thing. Oh my God, it is, isn't it?
Oh my goodness.
You okay?
Oh my, wow. And of course there were no seat belts or anything. You just pack them in and fly them out.
And I gather that these were open, so
I would assume so.
So that made it even colder.
The ones that, you know, either had to parachute or went down.
My son is 20.
And imagine him at that age.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think they all grew up very fast.
Yeah.
Oh, this is just so amazing. Can I?
Yeah, help yourself.
Oh, thank you.
You fit in this much better than I do.
Well, there are very few times when being this small is an advantage, but I will take it.
Flying in an aircraft of that era is physically incredibly tough. You need to have the strength and resilience of youth to be able to get into an aeroplane like that. I once met a ball turret gunner from the 385th Bombardment Group, and he was in his 80s when I knew him, and he was still able to hop up onto a stool and demonstrate to me how he crouched himself right up to get into that little ball turret, which is underneath the middle of the fuselage. And you could see his physical size and wiriness had lasted. It was obvious he'd been really fit back in the war years. You also need to have the reaction time. I've watched pilots, because I've flown in a B-17, elderly men flying these aircraft, and you can see their hands are going like that because the whole thing is shuddering so much. And obviously, if the 8th Air Force had thought it was a great idea to have men in their 50s or 60s flying B-17s, then that's what they would have done. But of course, it's not a good idea to have men of that age. It's also true that men in their late teens and early 20s are less likely to argue the toss. They're more likely to do what they're told, and that's how, I'm afraid that's how wars work. So you have these photographs of these 8th Air Force crews standing proudly in front of their machines, and they're going off into the sky with perhaps less than a 50% chance of surviving the war, and yet they went ahead with it. I think it's... I'm filled with admiration for their bravery and courage, but I don't envy their lot one little bit at all.
A new day on site, and already the sun is unrelenting in a cloudless sky.
It's going to be another hot one. We're carrying on in this area, doing some test pitting and sieving. We've got some more geophysical surveys just happening over there, and I think we're going to be heading down towards another field in a moment just to explore that. We've already got some metal detectorists over there at the moment, and they're finding a lot of signal. So hopes are high that we're going to start getting down onto it in the next couple of days.
We've actually found a Bronze Age arrowhead.
Wow. I've never found one before.
I've only ever found two.
Oh, really? So,
Found two.
and you've done
I used to do Bronze Age stuff.
a lot more digging than me.
I found one field walking, and I found one on an excavation in France, but that's really nice.
Yeah,
I'll tell you about that. Early Bronze Age, barbs and tangs, an absolute classic. That's beautiful.
Wow, well that's definitely not the era we're looking for, but a fantastic find nonetheless for any excavation. If you're enjoying this episode, you can help us tell more fascinating stories like this one. It's your support that makes our coverage possible. Join a worldwide community of Time Team fans on Patreon.
So it's the second morning and it's become really busy on site. We've got the geophysical team from Cranfield and they're out surveying with ground penetrating radar and resistivity, and I think there'll be some magnetometry later, just to see if we can get a spread of metallic readings that relate to the crash. Behind me we've got all the sieves that are still going, and what they're doing is basically guaranteeing that this is free of B17 crash sites, so they're taking it down to the natural subsoil surface and then they can move on. We'll put the sieves elsewhere because the metal detectorists are running out of flags. They're putting flags in the ground on every single metal reading. We have a grid system over there and it relates exactly to this grid as well, and we're just testing each individual square and finding those hotspots so we can narrow the search down to where we think the most promising areas of investigation are going to be. So this will be completed pretty soon. We'll move the sieves and the team over to the next side of the field and we'll investigate that.
It's just after lunch on day 2 and it's absolutely baking hot. So I've come to this lovely little spot under the trees where I've been looking at the pond just behind me. Now we've been told that that was once much bigger and it was the place that a lot of scraps of the plane were piled in after the war when they were trying to clear up and get back to agriculture. The pond's a lot smaller now than it was, so that's given us lots of space to metal detect, and I can hear behind me signals from the metal detectorists, so I'm going to go and find out what they found.
Hi, Helen.
Hello, Rich. Oh yeah, look at those.
This has even got a maker's stamp on it there. The ink's still there.
Oh gosh, that's over the top of this green paint. Does it say 55? 45?
That's it.
Something like that. Yeah. Yes. Oh, and look at those rivets. Yes. And every one of those rivets put in by a woman in an American factory.
I know, yeah.
Rosie
It's
the
weird.
Riveter. There she goes.
Now it's in a corner of a field in Britain.
Yes. While American bombers filled the skies of East Anglia, another fight for freedom was unfolding thousands of miles away in factories across the United States. With the country's traditional workforce serving on the front line overseas, women stepped in to fill their positions. Some 5 to 6 million women entered factories to facilitate America's war effort, many employed assembling heavy bombers. The fabled image of Rosie the Riveter was emblematic of American industrial prowess, integral to victory and boosting morale back home. Rosie gained an almost mythical status, immortalised in song and on the silver screen. Over 12,000 B-17s rolled off the production lines between 1941 and 1945. At its height, Boeing's Plant 2 in Seattle could churn out 16 B-17s in a single day. But even that was nowhere near enough to replace those shot down each day over Europe. So competitors Douglas and Lockheed Vega were co-opted to help meet the demand. Each B-17 airframe contained some 394,484 rivets, all individually stamped, so Rosie was kept busy.
It's gone really well today. Made good progress on sort of the debris field and the scatter. We've moved from the lower field up into this one here, and you can see all the flags behind me and a couple of sieves going on. We're just going to be test pitting these 1 metre test pits just to see what's in there, just to really try and establish the final resting place of the B-17. But yeah, it's been a brilliant day, really hot. I've lost about 6 pounds in weight.
Don't worry, Harvey, have a slice of cake and an ice cream to celebrate James's birthday.
After that dog.
come to the control tower at Rougham. It's a nearby airfield, and it's incredibly rare that it's got an intact control tower. The Rougham Tower Association have turned it into a museum, and so you can see not only how all the B-17s were marshalled and flown from a working airfield, but also you can see the clothing and the navigation aids and the diaries and the maps, everything that you need to see how the pilots and the rest of the aircrew actually did their job every day. In amongst all the memorabilia is what might be a tangible piece of our own story. This is believed to be a section of Little Boy Blue's fuselage. This is the most extraordinary thing, and you can see how incredibly thin it is, much thinner than the bits that we've been finding today. And if you bring your eye down here, see all the rivets and the different spacings that there are. They're much wider apart here. But as we come down, here's a hole. Now, there's some lost paint around here, but it also looks as if it's possible a patch could have been soldered onto this. And so the piece that was found near the pond today, that we didn't know what it was kind of unidentifiable, it looks very much like a piece of this skin, or possibly a patch that could have been soldered on. I bet they had to patch them all the time because they were forever getting covered in flak holes. Graham, you're the chair of the Rougham Tower Association. How did the association come to be able to rescue the tower?
It was actually given to us by the landowners in 1992. We were given permission by the estate to open up. It was a small group of volunteers started it, and they just went from there.
Yeah, so it took decades to finish the restoration.
Yes, and we're still going now.
Yeah.
We've still got bits and pieces to do. But it was designed to last 5 years, but it's lasted 80.
From spring 1942 onwards, England was invaded by 500,000 USA Air Force personnel. East Anglia was rechristened Little America as local populations swelled with US airmen. With up to 3,000 US nationals on each airfield, they often outnumbered the locals.
It was a great thrill for the boys in the village to see the B-17s, and they used to wake us up in the morning and then come back shot to pieces in the evening.
Ooh. Yeah, they were incredibly loud.
Yeah, they came so low we had the trees in our garden the tops cut out of them so they could get over. Yeah, they used to drive jeeps around and chuck chewing gum out at the children in the village.
They knew how to make themselves popular.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know, we had sort of friends who were Americans. My mother used to entertain 3 or 4 of them that we knew quite well, and my grandmother had actually 2 pilots staying in her house. I think they wanted to get away from the military.
Much nicer to stay with somebody.
Yeah, so, you know, we were very much involved with them. We were actually within the camp. You had to go past the sentry to get home if you'd been to Thetford.
It's the beginning of day 3 on site, and it's another baking hot day. Now, this morning we've moved from the area where we didn't find anything in the test pits over there to here, which is the focus of the metal detector finds, and the test pits are really proving much better. One of the first finds has been this little thing, which is the most amazing object because it's a ball bearing. You can see the balls rusted in place here. Now, you might think of ball bearings as being something that you find in a roller skate or a bicycle wheel, but they were used in tanks, in machine guns, in aircraft, in submarines, in everything that was crucial for the war effort. And in fact, our B-17 bombers, one of their main targets in Germany was the ball bearing factories there. So it's wonderful to be able to see the ball bearings, but what's even more amazing is that when you turn it round, you can see on this shiny washer here, it says, "Made in USA." On the morning of Little Boy Blue's crash in July 1944, they were part of a mission to bomb the main ball-bearing factory at Schweinfurt. Morning, Harry. Have you got anything out of this one?
We have actually. We've just discovered this rivet which
this rivet which still has its yellow paint on. And it could very well be from the name of the airframe on the fuselage, or the number at the rear end of the plane.
So is that picked out in yellow against the olive drab?
Yeah.
Right. Well, that is exciting. It's a pity it's only a rivet, it's not an edge, isn't it? Because I suppose it's impossible to know which end of the aeroplane it's from, but at least we can have a bit of a guess at it. And it's very evocative, isn't it, thinking that this might be part of its name?
Yeah,
Fantastic.
It's just amazing that the paint's still, you know, preserved after all these years.
Hello, Adam. Nice to see you in my part of the world.
Hi, Helen. How are you? All right?
I'm fine, thanks.
I'm going to do photogrammetry, so I'm going to do a 3D model of the landscape of about 25 hectares here. This is at the southern end of that, but then I'll come in and do some straight down shots just of where the activity is.
It's a very tricky landscape, this, isn't it? Because it looks completely flat, and obviously it's been ploughed for 80 years. So will you, in theory, be able to get much out of it?
Well, potentially. I mean, we're looking at for micro-topography, so minor changes, humps and bumps in the landscape.
While Adam gets airborne, I check in with the detectorists. Much larger pieces of the airframe are now being discovered in the hedges and ditches that line the edges of the field. They were probably swept over to clear the field for ploughing in the intervening years.
And we were digging this, and then he just looked up and said, wait a second, and this was just on the surface in the bush.
Wow.
So he threw himself into the bush and grabbed this, and there's a serial number on the inside. It's tucked in there, it's very subtle, you can only, there. You get the right at the end of my fingertip, so it's upside down there. Then you've got all these little parts, because apparently somebody's found those before.
Yes, we saw one of those on day one.
Yeah, so that's
they're really recognisable.
It's almost like it's you know, your box first fix for putting in them ends.
You got some of
them out. I have, yeah.
What's that?
So we're wondering if it's like intercom, where you can turn that on or off, or it's some system to turn on or off.
So you're fairly certain it's electronics?
Transformer or capacitor, something like that, but I'm not overly sure yet.
Maybe in the manual?
Yeah, that's what I'm going to go and have a look at.
Yeah, okay.
The geophysics team have covered lots of ground in an attempt to map out the crater, and we're getting closer to those all-important results. So for something like a crater, where the earth is blown out and then being pushed back in again, presumably you'll be able to detect that because it's all the topsoil and the subsoil is all churned up together. So the whole thing is more magnetic than the subsoil.
If it's crashed and it's burning, then what we get then is what we call a thermal remnant magnetism
yes, it kind of
within
sets.
the soil. So it sets itself in that sort of orientation at that particular time, depending on which way magnetic north is at that time.
So you can detect that with this as well?
Yes.
We've only just found the first piece of melted aircraft. So that's our first evidence that there was anything hot going on here.
Considering the results that we've just downloaded into the computer and mapped, has shown us that we've got part of what might be a larger crater.
Well, I really look forward to seeing it tomorrow then. End of day, so it's time to down tools and head to the pub for a well-earned pint. We've come to the Swan Hotel in Lavenham. It's a 15th century building with an amazing history, but that's not why we're here. We've come because it was one of the favourite drinking establishments of the US 8th Air Force, and I hear they left some very intriguing evidence behind.
We know just by looking off.
No, you're not.
This is 2.5, so it's a pint bigger than this. And they used to fill it up, drink it, and they'd write the times on the boot record here, which basically would say how quickly they would down the boot. And the quickest time was this chap here, which is a photo taken in this bar back in 1940, and he necked in 22 seconds. Now I like a beer, but
not that quickly. So 3.5 pints, 22 seconds. So that's what the boot record's about. And then you've got the Army and the American Air Force signatures there. And basically the whole bar was covered in it, but they put a specials board up at the end of the Second World War. And when they took it down in the 80s, that's when they found all the signatures.
This bit of wall is much more modern. It's got marker pen, and it was added after the older one was found by people who came back, by big reunions, people who came back on their own. There's people who came back with their children. Some of the writing is really shaky. You know, people who were obviously coming back years and years and years later. They're not all dated. But gosh, of course, all these people survived the war, but most of their friends probably wouldn't have done. Yes, look at this one. Pearl Harbor survivor. While we're remembering the American airmen who served in Britain, I take the opportunity to meet one of those B-17 aircrew who managed to survive the war, Tech Sergeant James Hutch Hutchinson. Hutch, who's now approaching his 100th birthday, joins me for a video call from his home in the US.
We were all teenagers, most. I think our pilot was about 23. Our tail gunner was 18. I was 19. The rest of the gunners, the other 5 gunners, were 19. It was an amazing thing to do.
It's a chance for the serving personnel on our dig to connect with the earlier generation. Oh, I've just discovered, Hutch, that there's some serving US Air Force people who've just come up behind me. Oh, and here they are. Oh, wow.
Hey, nice to meet you, sir. Hello, sir.
No, I'm alive and well. I'm happy with that.
So currently we are serving 2 different commands. So we serve Africa Command, and we also serve the European Command.
I put in about 400 hours. I flew 20 missions, but there was a lot of training missions. And assemblies over England were always deadly. You know, we had to get all the planes together in the dark. But we made it through, and thank God. Got hit by a fighter twice. Got hit by a flak all the time, practically. But when you got to the target, you had to fly into an air full of flak. The Europeans respect us more for what we did than the people here, because the people here aren't taught about it.
We're not taught about it as much as we should be, but the thing about living in East Anglia is that you've got the evidence of the airfields. You can see it around you, and every so often you drive past a monument, and so I think the children ask here more because they know something's going on from the remains. So that's where we're lucky, and it's very obvious to us how close we were to losing the war and how much we owe.
Britain became little America.
Yes. All the pubs were very grateful, I think.
Oh, the pubs. Well, I enjoyed the pubs. The beer could have been better, but
Speaking of beer, there's just time for some reflection over a pint with Richard on the excavation so far. We're a few days through. We found quite a lot of aeroplane, but there's still a lot to do.
I think we're making real progress, and I think, weirdly enough, I think where we're not finding aeroplane is where we're making the real progress, because that's really narrowing down the search. We started the initial test pits, and that was pretty much empty.
Yep.
And the metal detectorists at the other end of that field are finding absolutely nothing at all. And in between, there's huge quantities of airframes. So I think we're now really tying down where we need to be.
So we've got our edges, in a sense. And I've been worrying all the time about the edges, this crucial archaeological concept of the edge. And I was worrying that the crater wasn't going to have proper edges.
You know, I'm pretty hopeful that in the next few days, we're going to find something that really gets us to narrow it down, and then we can really go for it.
It's the morning of day 4, and the weather has cooled slightly, making a more pleasant working environment for another busy day in the field.
As we were saying yesterday, really, I mean, the field is very flat. It's been ploughed a lot over the last 80 years or so. But where the main action is at the moment, there doesn't seem to be any features showing up, anything that's obvious. But over the other side of the ditch, where all the green flags are, there does seem to be some minor earthworks there which are out of line with all the ploughing. So I'm quite interested to see what they think of that. It's a bit of a straight line, sort of low bank type thing heading towards the pond, but it could be when they filled in a crater.
That's a good point. Yeah. That peg is there. Right, okay. Okay, yeah.
Have you got something exciting?
Yes.
Oh,
I've got to do some more.
I wasn't expecting that.
No, well, that's why I said, you know, I thought I had something, but I wasn't certain what it was, and now I know. So I'm not sure if you can see very well.
That's the end of a crater.
It could be, yes.
Brilliant.
But I need to extend the grid now.
Yes, that's what geophysicists
One
always
more
say.
time. Yes, you know how we work.
Just need to extend the grid.
Yes.
Yes. To get a sense of scale, I pay a visit to another crash site in nearby woodland, which still shows very visible signs of the impact. And we've come here because there's an intact crater from a rather similar accident that happened with another B-17 bomber. And I think this might give us a really good idea as to what our crater looked like immediately the accident had happened, and so what we're looking for in the geophysics and the excavation. So the story with this one is that it failed on takeoff. One of the engines failed. The aeroplane had a belly full of bombs, and it crashed here into this crater, and the bombs didn't go off for another 5 minutes. Then at the point that they did go off, maybe one of them was blasted out and fell a bit further away because there's a second crater. So we got this long, narrow one, which is the main one, and a round one. So it shows that there can be lots of different shapes of craters depending on the precise and exact circumstances, which of course, in the heat of the explosion, we don't really know exactly what happened. Back on site, we seem to be homing in on the crater location.
Some sort of little
servicing plate,
yeah.
Possibly off the engine.
Caution, remove
tappets
before pulling nose section.
Well, we're trying to keep to a system, so the yellow flags denote that there is something too deep for us to sort of scrape the topside off. So we're not technically digging, we're sort of mapping. If you look at the blue flags in this area, it seems like we are getting possibly closer to the centre of whatever happened.
The geophysics results have now come back in from processing, but unfortunately the crater impression that we had anticipated from the preliminary readings is frustratingly absent. But the results have identified a few anomalies that we are going to investigate with some test pits. Looking closer at the geophysics results, we also believe we've identified the location of the previous dig in 1986. A distinct patch outlined in the results reveals what may be the trench where the machine gun was discovered. Zach, you're one of our American Air Force participants on the excavation, but I gather you've got a family history that includes B-17 bombers.
Yeah, so I got big into family history research about 6 years ago, and found out that my great uncle, so my dad's mother's brother, Joseph A. Kinney, took off from RAF Kimballton, which is just down the road from where I work now at RAF Molesworth. In 1943, I think 28th of July, if memory serves, and was doing a bombing raid over Germany and ended up getting shot down. He's buried over there in the U.S. military cemetery in the Netherlands. So he was the ball gunner, and nobody on the plane made it out, is my understanding, and they have a memorial to him actually in the Netherlands, and the rest of the crew in Vries. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that quite right, but in the Netherlands. So in my formative years, I was given his wings that were, with his personal effects after he passed away, as well as his bomber jacket. So I had those two when I was a little kid. When we would go in to do show and tell at school, that's what I would bring. And it was one of the big influences that drove me to join the Air Force, was kind of those small effects. So it kind of goes to show how even when somebody has passed on, they can still have kind of those lingering effects on the people that are still around, even decades later.
Yeah, absolutely. And it kind of brings it all around full circle, doesn't it, that you're now here on a B-17 crash site looking for people like your great uncle.
Just a piece of coolant pipe. You can still see the flange on the top where it would have joined, made of aluminium. I just think that was part of the engine until it had a massive impact. But they're starting to tell the story, the pieces we've got and where they are. So yeah, it's going good.
What's your favourite so far?
Well, I don't know. I like the Alcoa stamp, which it stands for the Aluminum Company of America. That's quite fun.
And wasn't that the one that possibly had Boeing on the other side of it?
Yeah, that's right. So there's some nice things that link you to B-17s, and there's nothing that can tell us which particular airframe it is.
No.
But nonetheless, there's some good finds of a B-17, and you know, again, showing us that we are really centering in on the crucial area.
The drone survey, I've processed that last night, and if anything, I think probably that field over there where there's lots of metal detector finds, and it's closest to the pond, is where there's a slight earthwork, but nothing that looks like a crater.
And equally, we don't know the age of what that potential earthwork might be. It doesn't mean it's World War II.
It's the end of another day, but while the crater still eludes us, it feels like we're homing in on our target. The team are out in force, making the most of the cooler morning.
I see that people have got out the finds that are perhaps telling us the most, that have got what normally, as an archaeologist, I think we'd call these inscriptions or lettering.
Yes.
I'm still adjusting to getting my head around.
This 20th century stuff is quite strange, isn't it?
It's very odd. But I haven't seen these ones. And this is clearly not metal.
That's a really strange fabric, isn't it? And people are bringing it out as maybe being wood. It's not a bakelite. We think it's something called paxolin, which is usually found in association with the electronic compartment and components. So it's non-conductive, and so you find it around radios. You do find it associated at times apparently with ammunition as well. But yeah, we think that's probably more towards the electronic element of the plane. Maybe in the radio area.
I can see that it's got an individual stamp. I mean, it's mass-produced, but it's got this little bit where it's got an individually stamped number.
Yeah.
Might that confirm the identification of the whole aeroplane?
No, I don't think so. I think that's more towards, you know, it will confirm what part of that aeroplane it was, and you know, they have serial numbers stamped on these things that will tell you it's a Boeing. Or what part of a Boeing it's from, but getting a data plate which is a unique identifier for an individual aircraft is very, very unusual.
Okay.
And you can see the rosettes on a few of them, like William Carroll there.
Yeah.
The rosettes are put in by the Battle Monuments Commission after they've been identified to have been recovered.
Oh, really?
The team visit the Cambridge American Cemetery and Memorial at Madingley to pay our respects to the fallen.
Oh, do not let the dead march play, o'er these at Madingley do stay, for they were young and old style gay, play their music of the day. Tunes of Dorsey, songs of Byng, let them hear Glenn Miller swing. Then too the crosses well may sway, with those at Madingley do stay.
Being at the ceremony of retreat where the flag is lowered feels like a kind of closure, not just at the end of the day, but at the end of what for me has been a remarkably emotional week. You know, you start off, it's an aeroplane, and you get to know and think about the people who are in that aeroplane and what happened to them, two who survived, but others who died. And my boys are nearly 21 and 18, and they're just the age when they would have been called up and sent for training and could have easily been flying on bombers like that.
United States 8th Army Air Force favoured daylight bombing.
And that meant that they were, of course, immediately visible to any German fighters during the day. And it's also worth pointing out that until later in the war, it was impossible for a fighter escort to accompany them all the way into Germany. The P-47s and the Spitfires simply couldn't make it all the way. That meant that after a point, the fighters would turn back, leaving the B-17s to go on their own. And although they had a box formation, which was designed to give them a kind of mass amount of firepower and keep the fighters out, the fact is that they were torn to shreds. And there is, of course, famously the 100th Bombardment Group out of Thorpe Abbotts, which lost catastrophic numbers of crews and aircraft. And it's not really until, I suppose, really the last year or so of the war, when the P-51 Mustang comes along, that had the range that would take accompany the bombers all the way into Germany and all the way back. And when that happened, really it was over for Germany with the air war. It was impossible for them to continue to fight back against that.
The story of the Bloody Hundredth was immortalised in the book Masters of the Air by Donald L. Miller, recently brought to the screen by Apple TV and the team behind Band of Brothers.
It's the end of the first week on site for Operation Nightingale, so that means a changing of the guard. A new set of UK and US military personnel are arriving, both serving and veterans, and they're going to lend their support to the project. I'm heading off to another time team dig for a few days, so I'm handing over to Giselle Kidai. Let's hope the new recruits bring good fortune.
So welcome to week 2 here at this B17 dig. I've got Dane with me. What's the update? What's happening today?
So today we got another contingent of Op Nightingale people. So I've had to sort of split them up into the rest of the grids. Basically today is carrying on what we did last week.
More sieving, more metal detecting, all of that. So is there any goal for this week at all?
Yeah, I wanted to go on the other side.
Perfect.
As always.
And what's on the other side over there?
So you can't really see it very well, but there's a blue peg on the corner of one of the 20-metre grids, and that's possibly right on the edge of a impact crater. So it was picked up on the geophysics. I finally got the geophysics results back from the mag, and it says it's about a 10-metre diameter thing that needs to be tested.
Anomaly.
Yeah. We've tested some of the other stuff from the resistivity, but so far it's coming up fairly blank.
Yeah.
People get it out with that tube now. So carefully does it. Let's take the big bit out first. See that. There is a possibility that could be the what the rounds went into a machine gun on.
Oh, cool.
You remember seeing it with the ATO yesterday?
Yeah.
Possibly, it's that kind of material. And that, a bit fragile.
Oh, wow.
I'm sure that somebody will be able to identify the wires and possibly the colours.
That's really good. That's just a surface find.
Surface find, yeah.
Wow.
Hello, Richard. We finished day 1 of week 2. What's happened?
The weather has changed, so that's been a really good thing because it was brutal last week and it's a bit more cloudy now. So the soil's not quite so baked, so they're making really good progress on the sieves.
Looks like it.
Yeah, and I think every station is now producing metalwork from the airframe, which is pretty much what we wanted.
Perfect.
Some of it's quite indicative. We're getting 50 calibre cases and around, which is
incredible.
Interesting from the guns. Some poppers that may or may not be associated with the flak jackets. There's lots of these poppers, but it's a nice possibility. They're evaluating the metal detecting holes over there. They're all finding things, which is good for morale. It's tremendous to get that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I think we're really tightening down. So next couple of days, I think is going to be.
Hopefully get to the crater or whatever anomaly that might be.
Yeah, I think so. But anyway, everyone's finding stuff. And we are beginning to tie down a little bit more story of this particular airframe.
Perfect. Amazing. Excited for tomorrow?
Yep, look forward to it.
We came across this triangle with 3 rivet holes, painted yellow, both sides.
So what part of the plane could that be from?
Well, people came across at the time and they postulated that it may either be the rear or the front of the plane where the paintings of the code numbers are. But bearing in mind the tail landed probably about a mile away, we could possibly say that it's from the front of the plane. Yeah. What do you think, Richard? Yellow painted aluminium?
Yeah, it could be the interior of the aeroplane.
Or the numbers, someone postulated, puts the numbers.
Is it?
Well, it's pretty yellow.
Yeah, both sides as well.
Yeah.
I still reckon that's interior of airframe.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I reckon.
So, Rich, what have you found here?
It's a manufacturer's plate for the exhaust manifold.
Oh wow. What's it got on it then? Can you read any of it?
Detroit Division General Motors Corporation, and it's dated 1943, just there.
Oh, amazing. It's got the serial number as well.
The serial number's along there.
It's week 2, day 2, and we're all just about to break for lunch, but we've had a fantastic morning. We've even found, while metal detecting, a manifold. And that manifold is amazing because it was one of the manifolds from a supercharger engine. It says Detroit on it, it says GM for General Motors, and we know that the supercharger is what was acting up and would basically ultimately cause this plane to go down.
During our time in the field, a number of locals have brought in memorabilia and their own research, which is all adding to our story.
I've got a friend of mine who used to do that on there.
Look at this.
What have you got there?
Tag.
Oh my god. Richard! That's incredible. That's absolutely incredible.
Was there anyone on the plane called Aaron?
Aaron Brinkhurst.
Brinkhurst.
That's the that's the co-pilot.
Unbelievable.
That's one of the individuals we're looking for. That's amazing. That is an incredible find.
That's a bit special.
That's find of a lifetime finding that.
Wow.
It's got name, it's got tetanus, it's got blood type.
Wow. That's incredible.
That's one of our 3. That's an incredible find. Incredible find. So, you know, if this is considered diagnostic enough, this can be what gets a grave marker at the cemetery. This can be what gets a rosette.
Oh,
so,
fantastic.
Thanks to this find, we could end up having next of kin notified. So
wow.
That's absolutely incredible.
Amazing.
Absolutely incredible. Well done. Well done on that.
Thank you.
Let's get this in a bag.
Now.
Even more incredible, the dog tag is discovered on Aaron's birthday, exactly 104 years to the day after he was born. Finding the dog tag is a significant milestone for the mission. Brinkhurst's family can now be notified, helping to bring closure for them. What's more, this development could ultimately lead to his official status being reviewed and updated.
This is actual ID tag. And this is Brinkhurst.
So the exact words were, was there anyone on this flight called Aaron Brinkhurst?
Yes, he's the co-pilot. So we're going to put a box there. But at the moment, this is as close as we're getting to these guys. And this was on him when it went down.
We're halfway through the week now. We've basically had people still sieving. They've gone to an area of interest now, but otherwise it's still the same sieving, same metal detecting, same GPSing. We were going to move people to an area where there was a crater, and the geophys hasn't come back through, but even with it, it's just not as important as this new area. So we focused people there, and we're just kind of going to keep seeing what happens for the rest of the week.
As the week goes on, the weather takes a turn for the worse, but that doesn't dampen the volunteer spirits. The once rock-hard soil has now turned into a thick, gooey sludge, making it a challenge to feed through the sieves. With the rain unrelenting, the team have no choice but to head for cover under the gazebo.
There's a bit of conduit, which would have been run the full length of the fuselage, so you can see you've got wires in there.
Yeah.
Some lovely original paint on it. but the best thing about this is the smell.
Okay.
Okay, do you want to smell 1944?
I would love to.
Okay, mind your nose on the sharp bits.
Oh my God.
And inhale deep.
Oh my God. What the heck?
Amazing,
It genuinely smells like you're going back in time.
Mm-hmm.
Like those musty bits of the museum when you're by all the...
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. Wow, I can't believe that's been able to be like kept like that. Like,
It's
I mean,
insane.
it's just...
Yeah.
Wow. Hello, George.
Hey, how's it going, sir?
Really well. How's it been? This is your first time with Operation Nightingale, right?
Oh, yes, it's great. It's great. It's been a great time out here.
Are you enjoying the sifting?
Oh, I love it.
And have you found anything?
I've found quite a bit of pieces. Not too big, not too small.
Little
but
metal pieces and all that?
It takes its toll on.
Operation Nightingale's resident munitions and militaria expert, Mark Kahn, drops in on site to help the team identify some of the latest discoveries.
And then we got a bag of propellant which has fallen out of one of those, but we're not, obviously.
Put it off?
Yeah, we don't want that. But that's literally it in terms of munitions.
Difficult to see a date on that one.
I think it should all say 43, I think, but they're quite degraded actually.
Yeah.
And one of our volunteers has discovered what could be a more personal artefact linking directly to the crew.
Hello, JT.
Hello.
So, I've heard that in this sieve, you found this.
Oh, yeah.
Any idea what this is?
Oh, yes, it's something we found, and we think it's either some kind of fastener, maybe for a ammunition pouch, or potentially from a parachute.
And these could be on parachutes, or could they be anywhere in the plane?
They could be in multiple uses, but yeah, what we've seen in the photos is from with parachutes.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
This is one of several small finds connected to the crew. Others include a clip from a flying helmet and something from the pilot's steering yoke, a small button that activated the microphone.
So, the reason we're digging here is because we think the plane crashed in that field behind us. So anything that's come with the blast has come straight into this wall here, and it should be the last place where stuff's remained untouched from the plough and general agricultural work, so it is totally in situ of where it would have hit.
We've got something here, but we've got a fence post in a way, but we're getting two different signals, so we're trying to get rid of that fence post.
Oh, I see.
Make sure that we've got everything out so far.
Gosh, that's big. What are they? Do you have any idea?
Fuel or oil, perhaps oil.
Well,
they came out of the ditch.
I think this was attached.
Yeah.
And when when it's brought it out of the ground, that's when it's come off.
Yeah. Oh, it's even got the rubber on it, hasn't it? Yeah.
We don't think we're finished there, but we need a pinpointer, and we've got a fence post in the way.
That's nice, isn't it? I like that.
It is.
These will undo. You know, you can, and they'll clean up like almost brand new. Yeah, hydraulic pipe. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Looks like it has been some sort of control panel, that it hasn't been like overly mullered by the plough or anything over the years or moved. So this would have been where it actually blasted straight into the wall of the ditch, and it's stayed ever since. So it's that little bit more special.
These crashes are all different.
Yeah.
So the one I previously worked on, the aircraft went straight in.
Yeah.
So, and that was clear. So all the material was there, and then some of it was spread around.
Yeah.
So what's happened here? The aircraft hasn't gone in straight in. I think it's come in and witness accounts.
Yeah. They say it's a flat.
Came in at sort of 45 degrees or whatever like
flat
that.
spin, I think was the word
used.
used.
Without its tail.
Yeah.
And it's come in and it's hit and impacted in that sort of fashion. But there's evidence of a fire, so there's bits of molten aluminium, so there has been a fire.
Okay.
But not significant enough, one would think, to cause the bombs to detonate. But what then happened, so it's come in like that, there's no deep impact crater,
Yeah.
it's come in, it's gone bang, and it's just showered the aircraft like confetti, and there'll be bits of it all around here.
Every field around,
over there,
basically.
Over there, there's
Okay.
bits the other side of the road, and that's what's happened to it. But that is this crash, you know. And so that's what we're finding here. So we're finding no substantial parts, although we know there were substantial parts that got taken away.
Yeah.
But there's nothing that's gone into the ground hard enough or deep enough to indicate any form of penetration.
And we're
like
finding
that.
all the metal detector finds. They're not that deep, are they?
No,
they're
not.
quite
No,
close
they're
to the
not.
surface.
And most of them are tiny, sort of thing.
Well, as the dig draws to a close, I return to the site for final reflections.
Hi, Dane. Lovely weather again, isn't it?
Yeah, it's been quite nice actually. Yeah.
Yeah, so I haven't seen you for about, it must be 10 days or so.
Yeah.
How has the last week of the excavation gone?
It's gone quite well, to be fair. We've managed to obviously zone in on an area that we have a bit of interest in, so that's why you see the excavation unfolding there. Also, we've had some good strikes with the metal detecting survey as well. So we've had parts related to maybe the radio room, which is more located over towards where the tent is. We've had pieces to do with the cockpit, and then further on with the metal detecting as it's starting to dissipate the further east we go. We've had pieces to do with like the bomb harnesses. So it's actually, it's producing good stuff.
Thank you very much, Dane. I've had a brilliant experience here. It's been great. Thanks. Right now, we're standing at the edge of a closing window, viewing a last glimpse of a defining period of humanity before it's forever consigned to history. Thousands of airmen of the 8th Air Force died, and there's a quote that accompanies the American fallen: "Time will not dim the glory of their deeds." So the work continues.
The crew's relatives have been informed about the mission and the discovery of the dog tag, and a memorial service is organised by the landowner, Stephen Honeywood, attended by Operation Nightingale and the families of the fallen.
On this day, 80 years ago, 10 young Americans took to the air from RAF Nettishall in the Flying Fortress 42-30851, the Little Boy Blue, looking to continue their part in the liberation of Europe from tyranny. A mid-air collision ended the lives of 8 of these men and changed the world of the 2 survivors forever. These fields in Suffolk still hold the traces of that fateful day: broken pieces of airframe, a lost dog tag, shattered fragments of lives. In a personal letter from radio operator Ronald Gray's mother to one of the survivors of the crash, Hal Haggerty, she expressed a hope that one day there might be a service on the field in which he died. Today, we fulfill that wish.
Harold was taken to a nearby medical facility. A colonel, the doctor, was taking notes, and as he interviewed my dad, without looking up, the doctor said, "Son, you can put the ripcord down now." This is that ripcord. It deployed the parachute, and this is a piece of that parachute that kept my father from the wreck here.
I can remember it being a very bright morning, a bit like today, I suppose.
Local resident Brian Cracknell was a young schoolboy in 1944 when Little Boy Blue came down in the fields. He and his friends searched the surroundings for wreckage.
We walked down to what we call across the plants to Thurston village from Bayton. And there, of course, is this tail section, and it's steaming a bit. There's still a lot of heat and things. Nobody's in it. We're looking in the tail plane. No one's there. And so we just marvelled how big it looked, you know, as kids. I mean, it's laying in the field near the railway line.
They stumbled upon the remaining section of the plane a mile or so away, where the authorities were already at the scene.
We're not allowed as kids. They wouldn't let us go and have a look at the actual, because there are an awful lot of MPs and British policemen had gathered by then. And so it's a bit distressing because there were a lot of parachutes there. and you can guess what was under the parachute, can't you? So they collected bits and pieces. And then, of course, what we do is we just go back to school. And, you know, you're telling your mates, God alone, what an awful crash. I mean, as kids. But you might think it's strange, but at that particular time, that wasn't an unusual happening, because there was an awful lot of American lads over here at that time, and the airfields were so close, you could shake a stick and you were in the next bloody airfield.
It's just under a year since the excavation of the B-17 bomber in a field not far from my home, and it's exactly 80 years to the day since the accident that ended the lives of those 8 young men. But there's another thing about the archaeology. You know, what are we doing this archaeology for? Some people will say, well, has it told you much about the past? Has it moved on our knowledge? And maybe it hasn't moved it on hugely, but the most important thing is that in the spirit of Operation Nightingale, it's improved so many lives.
It's got a feeling of place, because we know what happened here and we've worked on it doing the field work, and we've seen a memorial. What was probably a rather what we would imagine to be a run-of-the-mill East Anglian field has now got a sense of specialness about it.
My uncle John McCluskey was 20 years old when he died, a bull terrier gunner. Born in Scotland, amazingly enough, moved to America, lived in New Jersey, then came back here for the B-17, Little Boy Blue. My father's oldest brother, and our family has never been the same since that day. He's been the golden boy of our family. And then 6 weeks ago, I got a letter that there was a field in England where he was. So I'm here today, you know.
Because I think we know a part of this great mission, but to bring it full circle and see the mission at work is absolutely an amazing experience.
He was very important to him. In fact, he named my brother after Aaron, so my brother is Aaron as well. I'm so glad I'm here hearing these stories. I wish my dad and my grandmother could hear them, but I know that they are hearing them elsewhere right now. So I'm just so touched that this community is remembering them in this way, and I'm excited to see what they find.
These events now, to me, they are part of our shared history with our American cousins, because with the friendly invasion, as they now call it, 300,000 or 400,000 young American airmen over here, and some tragic losses. And that's the heartbreaking thing, but the uplifting thing is the fact now, today, we're sharing with the families, we're remembering, the memorial stone is there now, and it takes the story forward. It will be for generations beyond us.
And so his father, my grandfather, signed him off when he was 17. 17. Yeah. And then when the crash happened, he was 19. Just shy of 20. Yeah. So.
Yes, and it affected him the whole of his life, obviously.
Oh, it did. Yeah.
We are so lucky that we don't have to send our boys off to do this,
Isn't
aren't
that
we?
the truth?
Today's world charges along, and you've got to remember that these guys were 19, 20, 21. They'd had 16, 18 weeks training. They flew halfway across the world. They said goodbye to their families. They had no mobile phones, no means of communication, and they sacrificed their lives for our freedom today.
This year's dig has enriched the story of Little Boy Blue's final resting place. Plans are now afoot to return in a future season for further investigation. Join Time Team on Patreon to access exclusive 3D models, masterclasses and behind-the-scenes insights.